Hello, how are you doing today? I have a big group of newly acquired books that I'm eager to read, so I'm going to go through each title and discuss why I'm interested in reading it. And also, bonus, I have 2 book prize shortlists to show you and go through. Actually, 3 shortlists, because one of the book prizes has 2 different categories. So I'm going to discuss all of those titles as well. I'd love to know if you've read any of these books or if you're interested in reading any of them now. Please let me know about that in the comments below. But first, I'm going to go through and discuss a number of books which have just been published in the past month that I'm interested in. So there's Beasts of England by Adam Biles, which is about a farm in the south of England, which is converted into a petting zoo, and it follows the lives of a number of different animals on this farm and the politics involved in that. And can you guess what this is a reimagining of? Yes, it's George Orwell's Animal Farm. So it says, Adam Biles' anarchic return to Animal Farm is a warped fable, a state-of-the-farmyard novel about backstabbers, truth twisters, and corrupt charlatans. And so there must be something in the air because about George Orwell, because there is also published recently the Julia, a reimagining of his novel 1984, or a novel that's told from the point of view of the character of Julia from 1984. And I've just been rereading 1984 and really enjoying it. I'm so involved with this reread. So I might go back and reread Animal Farm before then getting to this new version of it by Adam Biles. Kibogo by Scholastique Mukasonga, who's an author from Rwanda. This is a novel of satire, lore, and living memory. It's about a rogue priest who is defrocked after mingling Christian gospels with the martyrdom of Kibogo. And so it's about colonialism in Rwanda and the introduction of Christianity and the kind of erasure of traditional Rwandan mythology. Split Tooth by Tanya Tagaq. This is a novel which was listed for the Giller Prize in 2018, but it's only just been published here in the UK, and it's another story about an individual trying to reclaim their heritage. It follows the story of an Indigenous girl in Canada and follows her coming-of-age story and wrestling with contemporary issues that are affecting her community, but also exploring the mythologies of her people. I also have some new reprints of older novels. So there is Iced by Ray Shell, which was first published 30 years ago, and this is a story told in diary form about a man who becomes addicted to crack, and following his story and how a lot of the issues that he is wrestling with are ones that a lot of people are still dealing with in America today. Then there is Hackenfeller's Ape by Brigid Brophy, which was first published in 1953. And this is a story about a professor who goes to the London Zoo and becomes very attached to an ape there, but then a scientist comes along and wants to send that ape into space. So it's following that story, which is kind of comic and absurd, but it's also looking at animal rights and the meaning of human existence as opposed to animal existence. I also have a nonfiction book, The $100 Trillion Wealth Transfer by Ken Costa, which is about how within the next decade or so, there will be a massive transfer of wealth from the baby boomer generation that acquired it to Gen Z and millennials, and how the politics of this newer generation is very different from the older generation. So with a transfer of wealth comes a transfer of power, and how this might radically reshape our culture and our politics. I also have a group of new fiction that is about killers or have kind of spooky vibes that feel seasonally appropriate for the end of October. So first there's She's a Killer by Kirsten McDougall, who's an author from New Zealand. And this is about a woman who is 30 years old and is kind of technically a genius according to the IQ scale, but she's very reserved and very reclusive, but she meets a 15-year-old who has a very different conception and understanding of the world, and it's about their bond and experiences together. Eleanor Catton is a fan of this book. She says it is smart, assured, and extremely funny. This is satire at its best. Luda by Grant Morrison. This is a phantasmagorical novel about a famous drag artist called Lucy LeBain, who's been very well known, very well established, but who is steadily aging, and about an upcoming drag star called Luda that wants to learn from her. I think it's a kind of All About Eve type story, or at least that's what it sounds like, but in the drag world, and that sounds so fantastic. Underground by E.S. Thomson. This is a novel set in London in the 1950s, when there's not only a plague going around, but there's also a killer on the loose. So it's about two different characters that are trying to uncover the identity of this killer. It sounds very atmospheric and right for this time of year. Out There Screaming, an anthology of black horror fiction edited by Jordan Peele, the great film director of films like Get Out and Nope. And I think the fiction in this is very reflective of his type of filmmaking, which is very tense and thrilling, but also has a social message to it. And so some of these stories, I think, are more realistic. Some of them are slightly more fantastical. There's a mixture of authors, of some that are well-known and well-established, and others are newer voices. And I love reading through anthologies like this to get a sense of different authors that I've not read before and whose work I might want to explore more. Next, I want to show you the books that are on some recently announced book prize shortlists, starting off with the Books Are My Bag Reader's Choice Award, which are really wonderful awards, which the winners of the different categories of this are actually chosen by the public. So I'll put a link below to the website so you can look through the different shortlists and vote for yourself. And Books Are My Bag, they sent me this beautiful new tote bag. And Books Are My Bag are an organization that exists to help promote independent bookshops. Look at how lovely this is. So they very kindly sent me the books that are shortlisted for the fiction category this year, and these are the 4 books. So there's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, which is been such a popular book, a story about friendship and gaming that I loved reading so much. I think it deserves all the attention it's been getting. And there is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, which already won this year's Women's Prize, and here is yet another book prize nomination for Demon Copperhead. Sorry, I'm gonna keep doing that as long as this keeps being nominated for book prizes. It's a novel I loved so much, a really harrowing and beautiful story, so powerful. And then there are 2 books which I haven't read yet, which are Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel, which are about a number of characters and time travel that take place in a number of different places, from Earth to a colony on the moon. And there is Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kuang, which is a novel about the publishing industry and racism. And I'm not certain if I want to read this book or not, because I read Kuang's novel Babel, which I thought was okay, but which I was a bit underwhelmed by. But this is obviously very different subject matter and probably style of writing, so I'd be curious to try it, but I'd love to know if you've read this book and what you think of it. Next are the shortlists for the Polari Prize, which celebrate queer literature, and there are 2 different categories. There's one, the Polari Prize of authors that have been published before, and then there's the Polari First Book Prize, and in each category there's a mixture of fiction and non-fiction and memoir. And the Polari Prizes grew out of the Polari Salon, which is a literary salon, a queer literary salon that's been taking place in London for many, many years. I've participated in it myself a few different times, where I gave readings of my fiction. And one year, memorably, I gave a reading alongside Sarah Waters at the South Bank Center. It was such a wonderful night and such a great experience. So yeah, I'm really excited to see the shortlists for this new award. So first, there's the books that have been shortlisted for the Polari Prize. There is Young Mungo by Douglas Stuart, a novel that I loved so much, a kind of contemporary queer or contemporary set in the 90s in Scotland, kind of Romeo and Juliet story, but between two different men of across sectarian lines, and their really intense, beautiful, tragic story, really intense, powerful novel that I just loved. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield, a novel I've been wanting to read for ages, about a woman who goes on a deep sea mission which ends in catastrophe, and when she returns home to her girlfriend, she is much changed. So it's about how the changes she has gone through is affecting her relationship with her partner. I read Julia Armfield's debut short story collection a number of years ago when she was listed for the Sunday Times Young Writer of the Year Award. And I've been wanting to read more of her fiction. I've heard so many great things about this novel. Fire Island, A Queer History by Jack Parlett, with a very cheeky cover. So this is about that strip of land off the coast of New York, which is a kind of queer mecca known as Fire Island, which has been traditionally a place to party, to protest, and to fall in love in quotation marks. And so this is all about the history of that location, which I've always been very curious about. I've never gone to myself. I've had friends in America that used to regularly go there every summer, and it's this kind of whole culture that I've never really been a part of, but I've always been interested in, and like hearing my friends like discuss it, because I don't think we have any like physical location like this in the UK, or that's kind of as comparable or as famous as Fire Island. So it'd be really interesting to know about the history of it. The Schoolhouse by Sophie Ward, whose debut novel Love and Other Thought Experiments I thought was so excellent and inventive. It was listed for the Booker Prize. And this novel is about a librarian who's very self-contained and reclusive, but a new encounter forces her to contemplate her past, growing up in the 1970s and going to an experimental school and her experiences there. I started reading this novel at one point, but I think I read it at a very bad time. I read it when I was on a plane journey at night, so I was kind of falling asleep and just wasn't able to really concentrate on the story. So this is a novel that I've been wanting to return to. Here Again Now by Okechukwu Nzulu, which is a novel about two young black men in Britain who have been longtime friends, and it feels like their lives are just starting, but after a devastating night and encounter, it changes everything and it forces them to confront their past. So it's about the story of their friendship and their development. All Down Darkness Wide by Sean Hewitt, which is a memoir about the author's experiences starting a relationship which quickly becomes very, very loving, very wonderful and intense, but about how his partner experiences severe issues to do with depression, and about how that affects their relationship, about his struggles to try to help his partner through this very difficult period. It sounds like a very intense and emotional story. Sean Hewitt is a poet whose poetry I've read and enjoyed before. I have heard mixed things about this book that some people absolutely love it, and other people I've heard call it pretentious. So I'm very curious to see what I'll make of this book. Then there are the books that are shortlisted for the first book category of the Polari Prize. So there is the memoir Love from the Pink Palace by Jill Nalder, who is an actress, and this memoir describes her experiences moving to London and becoming an actress there during the 1980s. A very exciting and vibrant time, and about the many gay men that she became very close friends with, but it was also a very scary time because it was when the AIDS epidemic was started to really spread, and the misunderstanding, and there was a lot of stigma attached to it. So she describes that experience of having a lot of her friends, her very close friends, dying during that period. And this was the story that if you watch the TV series It's a Sin, this is the real life story about the female friend that was at the center of that series. And this also comes with a foreword by Russell T. Davis that created that series. None of the Above by Travis Alabanza. This is a nonfiction book where the author looks at and ponders 7 different phrases which have been directed at them as a Black, mixed-race, non-binary individual, how some of these phrases were meant to celebrate them as a person, others were intended to be offensive. And it's looking at these different identity labels, how they can sometimes inhibit someone, and in other ways like articulate and express who they are as a person. This book also won the Jalak Prize this year. Rising of the Black Sheep by Livia Kojo Alor. This is a poetry collection exploring queer identity and institutionalized racism, but also pleasure and joy, and also through these poems, it's a kind of coming of age story. The Whale Tattoo by John Ransom. This is a novel about a gay man that returns to his hometown after leaving under very stressed circumstances, and about reconnecting with his father, but also having a number of hookups. So I read this novel as part of a physical book club that I belonged to quite a while ago, and I thought it was a really striking debut, a really original voice, and there are some very vivid scenes. I also really like the way he describes sensual encounters in a way I've not really come across before, but there were other elements of the plot which I didn't feel worked quite as well, but a very unique book. A Visible Man by Edward Enninful. This is a memoir about the man who became the first Black editor-in-chief of British Vogue, and he's also the current editor. And if you're watching the new series of UK Drag Race, he was also a guest judge recently, which was really great to see. So this is the story of his life from very humble beginnings to becoming this major icon in the fashion industry, and about his experiences moving through that. Sounds like a really fascinating story. And finally, on the debut shortlist, there is The New Life by Tom Crew, a novel I loved reading so much. I read it at the very beginning of this year, and I just thought it was incredible. The story of 2 men in the late 1800s in England who endeavored to write and publish a book about the sexual experiences of people that they don't feel they can be open about because of the politics and the strictures of the time. It's a really heartrending story that I just think is incredible. So those are all of the books I want to talk about, all of the new books and all of the shortlisted books for these different awards. Like I said, I'd love to know if you're interested in reading any of these books now, or if you have read any of them, let me know in the comments below. Or if you've acquired any new books recently that you're really excited to read, I'd love to hear about that as well. And I hope you're doing well and reading good things. I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.